Hi there, welcome to the first video in a new series looking at a slightly different aircraft. It's the DA40. I did the TDI version recently, slightly more basic aircraft, not got such a sophisticated GPS and autopilot system. This one's the NG, the next generation version, and it's got a G1000 in it, which is a pretty comprehensive GPS and autopilot system. So we'll be looking at that in more detail in the later ones, but today I'm just going to give a quick overview of what's in the cockpit and what we're going to try and emulate, and we'll work our way through the Stream Deck, and I'll split this into a couple of videos. I'll do the easy bits today, some basic allocations which are relatively easy to understand, and I've got some more complicated bits to do when I'm going to emulate some of the G1000 functions and the radio functions. They take a bit more explaining, so there'll be longer videos to look at later on. But let's start off with the basic overview of the aircraft. Let's have a look. Yeah, there's the external view. It's become one of my favourite aircrafts to fly as a trainer. It's quite nice. The high wing Cessnas do have a problem when you're trying to do circuits. The wing covers your view as you turn of the runway, so it's difficult to get yourself lined up. A low wing aircraft like this, as you do your left hand turns, if you're doing a left hand circuit, the left hand wing of course dips down out of the way, so you get quite a nice view. So I like this for its visuals, and I saw one of these in real life and had a chat with the pilot, and he showed me around the aircraft. So it is one that I've not flown, but at least been near enough to see, which is great. It's a nice looking aeroplane, and let's have a look around it. It's quite a slippery aircraft in aerodynamics. The drag's very low on it. You can see it's meant to be a four-seater, but it's very tight inside, I have to say. So you wouldn't want to go very far, I don't think, in it, and luggage capacity is quite small, but it's got a nice engine management system, which takes a lot of the load off, particularly a student pilot. And we'll look at that later in some detail, but that's what we're going to be looking at. And in terms of the cockpit inside, it's a relatively simple layout to understand, so there's not a lot to get to grips with, and that helps us with our programming. So we've got the standard lights. We haven't got a beacon light if you've been flying the Cessna. We've got the strobe, we've got the nav lights, they're called position, taxi and landing. So that's it for the lights there. And they're dead simple switches to put onto the Stream Deck. I'll deal with the night lighting, the internal lighting later. That's again a fairly long video to explain how that works. We've got the backup, the standby instruments of airspeed, the horizon, and the altimeter, and that's really it. So we haven't got any. If all this fails, we haven't got any engine management gauges, no exhaust gas temperature or anything like that, or fuel flow, or even there isn't a fuel meter. How much we've got left in the tanks. So if this system fails, then we're looking to land pretty quickly, I think. We've got an engine master switch, so we need to have that switched on to enable the engine, and these aren't emulated in the in Microsoft Flight Simulator, so we won't be dealing with those at all. So we'll be dealing with those four switches there. I'm not going to deal with these emergency switches at the moment. I haven't got to grip with exactly how to program them, and haven't really used them yet. We'll just concentrate on the normal flight things. This is the engine master. Now it's caged, so you can't accidentally switch it on or switch it off, but I can't find out how to access that animation, so I can't get it to flip up, go on and flip down. I can't animate that, so my animation literally looks like that, like this, as I'm pressing my Stream Deck, which is very slow responding for the moment for some reason, but I press my Stream Deck and it magically works its way through the caging, but That's the best I can achieve with that, but at least it's functional, it does work, although very slowly today. So we'll be looking at these switches, that switch there, the engine master that we need, the Avionics master, of course, we want to do. Slightly different technique to make that work from these, and I'll show that when we get to it. We will emulate the buttons here in a later video for the primary and the main flight display, and the radio stack. We can get that sorted. The rest of it, everything else on here, will be emulated on my X-Touch Mini. It's a MIDI controller, so I'll be dealing with that in other videos. The same with the MFD. All these side buttons we'll deal with later on the X-Touch, and these will be on the Stream Deck, and we'll deal with those later. Let's change views slightly. Let's shuffle across this way. Here we go. Down here we've got, this is the switching the electronics on, basically getting the battery and the alternator live and connected. So we'll deal with that key switch there. That will go from one to the other. So we'll turn the electrics on, and then that's the engine starter, which we'll deal with. And the way this works, it's got two fuel tanks. It's got the master tank that we work with, and it's got a reserve auxiliary tank. We can transfer fuel from the auxiliary tank to refill the main tank as we fly. So we've got a button there that we need to do that, and obviously put it there. The flaps I've got programmed on my Logitech throttle quadrant, so I won't be dealing with those. I've got a gauge that I've got on my Stream Deck, but I don't actually have any control on the Stream Deck. I would rather have the physical button. Here we've got the parking brake, and that's very easy to sort out in the Stream Deck. Throttle is from my throttle quadrant there. And if I just switch views slightly and have a look here, we've got a fuel valve which actually has 3 positions. Now normally it's in this normal mode, and we can transfer from the auxiliary tank to the main tank. Even when it's in the normal position, the pump and valve will open to move it from one to the other. It's got here this caution, intermittent use only. It's emergency. We can, in an emergency, draw from the auxiliary tank, but intermittent use only is what it says. So it really is just to get us down, and of course we've got fuel off as well. So this is a 3-position switch that we're going to work with. Trim will of course be on my yoke. I'm not going to deal with that at all on my Stream Deck. So let's start having a look at the Stream Deck. Let's get ourselves back to here. So these lights here, the landing lights, taxi lights, position lights, strobe lights. If I bring my Stream Deck in, and you should be able to see that here, these are the 4 buttons here. This button here takes me back to the hangar, so I can choose different aircraft if I need to. So if I've got the wrong aircraft up, but I'm just going to press on here, and that will take me to the profile for the NG. I've done lots of other videos on how Stream Deck actually works and how to program and get things in, so I'm not going to go into great detail. I've already built the profile I want to work with, but I'm going to show you behind the scenes and show you what's allocated to them. So the landing light is relatively simple. It's one of these Lorby Axes and O's add-ons. And again, if you haven't seen how to get that, you need to look at the video on how to set up the Axes and O's. And I'll try to reference as many of these as possible in the description to help you find them. But we need to, when you start using Axes and O's, of course, Axes and O's has to be running, because this will pass commands through here. There's nothing to program in here. Nothing of the Stream Deck needs to be done in here at all. So long as you have got your web API enabled, the two will talk to each other. And that's really all that needs to be done, as far as I can remember. This then just passes these instructions here straight onto there, and it will also pass information back, and that's how these gauges run. So these two talk to each other. They do need to be running and in online mode for it to work. So I can park that out of the way so you don't have to see that again. Let's just turn it back into online mode, and we'll move that across out of the way. So I have chosen here, it's a toggle with this one press switches it on and one press switches it off. So if I press on that, you can see that's looking like it's on. I've drawn a different graphic for the on. It's a screenshot that I've done. Put it into an art package. I put a little red dot in the corner so I know when it's on or when it's off. And you should see that moving here. So if I just zoom in on here, when I press on that, we should see the animation working. Why is that not? Yeah, it is. It's just very, very slow today. So there's the switch off and there's the switch on. It's not actually blindingly clear or in the cockpit when the landing lights on or off. You do have to look fairly carefully. So that's why on my Stream Deck I've added a little red dot. Even when it animates at first glance, it's not easy to see whether it's on and off, but a little red light on there. In other aircraft I've done, what I've done is I've changed the colour of the text, red for off and green for on. So I could do that here. That land here for the off, I could change that and have that as red because it's off, and green when it's on. It's up to you whether you like that or not. Whatever makes that obvious to you. So at the moment, the landing light's off. If I press that, the landing light is now on, and it's changed the text to green. So you can do that trick if you like. But here I've just been experimenting with what can I do with these buttons, just with a little red marker at the top. Is that obvious enough for me? I quite like it. Okay, so the instructions for the landing light. Let's return to the landing light. It is a key event, just as if you pressed a key on the keyboard, and it toggles the taxi lights. Now, where do you get that from? Well, you can get it from two places in X's and O's. You can get it as if you were going to assign a button here, but then don't actually assign it, abort from there. So what I could do is I could go from here as if I was going to program it up as a key event, and it's my landing light. So if I type in for the filter, land, and apply the filter, there's an electrical event there of toggle the landing lights. So I click once, right hand click, and that has copied it to the clipboard, so that can go away. And what I would do now is I would paste it in here. So if we take that out, I can paste that in there. So that's one way of getting it. The other way of getting it is if you look at the scripting, the RPN script editor, you've got the ability to insert a sim event or insert a variable here. And I work with this more often than I work with that, because I'm often putting variables in at the same time. So I must admit that's what I work with most often. So it's the same process as if you're going to write a script, but again, if you want to put an event in, it's exactly the same dialogue as we had before. In fact, that filter that we set up before has been remembered through this interface as well, so we can still apply the filter, and it'll be exactly the same process of selecting it, right clicking the mouse to copy it to the clipboard, closing that down, and then applying it here. So we can apply exactly the same thing there. So it makes no difference which way you go, but I prefer working with that script editor, because this is what we're going to do. We have to send a value to it, so we send a value 1. It works out for itself whether it should be toggling them on or off, because it has to read a variable, and it has to read to see if the taxi light's on or not. So that's why I keep this window up, because I need to get that variable when I'm setting this up. So I'm going to insert a variable, and in fact it should be, whoops, that's interesting, that's what, there we are, it's my landing light. There we go. So I'm going to set up my landing light variable here, so toggling the landing lights on and off, checking whether they are on or off so we can send the appropriate code. And so we will set again the filter. This is the filter for the variable, and there it is. Here is the landing light on. So what state is the landing light? That's what we really want. So same process before. click it once, right hand click, close this down, and I would paste it in there. So this has to be reading the variable, and it's an A variable, an aircraft variable, and you'll see that again if I go back to here, and we'll toggle for that, and aircraft system, and you see it's got an A here to say this, that one. So that's all we want. This one here checks whether the light is actually on itself, and that requires the battery and electrical circuit to be up and live. This one is just checking the switch, the position switch, and that's more of use to us. So that's why I've chosen that one. So copy that in. That can go away. Let's bring this to the front again, and paste that into the variable. So we've got the event, the variable, and tell it that it'll be a 1 when it's actually on. We want this button to repeat, so that if we hold it down it repeats. There isn't a long press, we don't have to worry about that, but we do have to then click submit. But I'm not going to click anything here, I'm not going to submit because I've got this up and running already. So this bit here is standard standard Stream Deck stuff, so we don't actually have to submit this. Any changes you make to the graphics, if you drag and drop a graphic onto here, or select one from a library, or change the font or the words, we don't need to submit. But all the programming stuff we've done here, we have to submit that at the end to make sure that it goes in there, and that catches you out quite often when you first start doing it. So that's what that needs. So now that landing light is set up and working. The taxi light is pretty much the same, so we would search for the taxi light toggle command, copy, paste it into here, and the variable is pretty much the same method, light taxi, and it's in Boolean, it's on or off, and its value is 1 when it's on, and then we would submit that. In fact, you can just type them in if you're confident with it. You don't have to go and paste them. Once you've seen the structure, landing lights toggle, and check whether the light landing is on, toggle taxi lights, light taxi is what we're looking at. Some of them are a bit different. You've got to watch out for 1 or 2 odd ones. The position is actually called the nav light, so we'll be toggling the nav lights on and off. So it's still a toggle switch, sending the value 1. Light nav, that's what we're checking, and it's 1 when it's on, and the submit button of course is below there. The strobe is slightly different. It's still a toggle, but rather than all the others have said toggle nav lights or toggle taxi lights, the strobe just says strobes toggle. It doesn't say light for some reason. Probably different programmers on different days, or just been back from the pub at lunchtime or something. But there you are. It's strobes toggle, but this is still light strobe when we check it. So there's a bit of a mismatch there. So watch out for that one if you're just typing them in. But it's the same, and we submit. So that's it. That's the lights done. So they just work. Onto the tank. As it's a 3-position job, and I've done it using 3 different switches, and with a graphic taken for each one. You can do it with a long press. Or you can write a script for it, but just doing it as 3 buttons. We've got plenty of buttons to play with, and it works quite well. So we needed to find out what command and what values are being used, and I'll show you how I did that. I'll kind of replicate that for you so you can see exactly how I did it. So I'm going to park this off onto my second screen for the moment so you can see what I did. In here, there is, in the scripting area, we can watch the simulator events, and I'll clear that list. So we can actually manipulate the control and watch what's going on. It works for some things, not for everything. I'm just going to park this over into my second monitor as well. This is going to disappear. So I tell you what I'm going to do. The newest version allows you to pin the application to the front so it doesn't get lost. Normally if I click on here, if I turn that off, watch, turn off the bring to front. If I click on my Microsoft Flight Simulator, that scripting will disappear, and then I have to bring it back. So I'm going to fix that to the front. If I stop and restart axis and nose, it will forget that this is only a temporary fix for the moment, you know. So let's move that across out of the way. This stays live, which is nice. So I'm receiving this event from the simulator, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my instrument view. So I'm looking down here, and I'm going to watch the event as I turn the fuel valve. And so it says fuel selector is set, and it's sent the value 3 for the emergency tank. And let's turn it to off. Off is 0. Turn it back to there, it's a 3, and turn it to here, the value is 2. So 2 is normal, 3 is the emergency or the auxiliary tank, and 0 is off. And you'll see that reflected here. If I look at, I'm using a Lorby axis and no event. It's just an event, it's not a toggle. It doesn't actually have to read anything back. I'm just sending in a command to it, because I'm not changing the graphic at all. And that's why I've avoided using a button here, because any of these only have 2 graphics, basically on and off. As you can see, if I use a toggle, there's an on and off. You can't have a 3 graphic one. You'd have to create a gauge of some kind, a steam gauge or a slider gauge or something, probably a steam gauge, and it's just not worth the effort. It's too complicated to do that for something that you don't use that often. So, well, that's my opinion anyway. I'd rather be flying than drawing, to be honest. So my main tank, fuel selector set, it's a K event, and as you know, we'll get those from probably from the scripting, and it's a simulator event. So if I look for I can try selector, anything that narrows it down. So aircraft fuel selector. You can see there's a lot of fuel selectors to work with there. Fuel and tanks, there's loads of them. So the one that I've chosen, again, if I move that out of the way, bring this in for you. Fuel selector set, and I'm sending the value 2 for it to be the main tank. And if you remember, it was 3 for the auxiliary tank and 0 for it being cut off. No idea what 1 would do, but having checked here, watching these events, that's what that does, and we can check that out. I'm going to let's bring that to a decent size out of the way. So I'm going to press for the auxiliary tank, and I'm going to press for the cutoff. So I'm pressing the actual switches on my Stream Deck, which you can't see because I haven't got a working webcam today. There you go, auxiliary tank and main tank. So that works. So having this 3-button set up just works. Okay. So that's that one done here. That's all that layer done. If we look at the engine switch here, remember if I said that I can't actually find out how to animate the safety cage section of that. Cannot watch. I've watched the variables for that. In fact, if I bring my watch in, if I flip that up, nothing appears. It's just not being received. But we can do the switch, and we can watch the switch working. So engine master toggle, that works there. So I'm toggling that on and off, and that works. So if we look at my Stream Deck for the engine, it's engine master 1 being toggled, and it's a really strange variable that we've got to look for. We're looking for this one here, and again I'll do a search filter for engine master. and there it is, engine master switch, and it says that we need to put an index into it. We need to tell it which engine we're talking to, and you'll see that here. So if I get rid of this and we'll put it in as if I was putting it in for the first time. So if I right hand click on that to copy it to my clipboard, close that down, paste it in here, you see it just says index, so you need to get rid of the index there and tell it that it's engine 1 that we're looking for. Okay, so if it's got index, it's saying you need to index it. Sometimes it doesn't tell you need to index it, and I'll try to point it out to you. Sometimes it just gives you the text and you have to work out for yourself if it only works if you index it to the one you're working, whatever it is you're working with. But that master one does tell you need to index it. So that's it for there is a toggle event. The command is engine master 1 toggle, and it's this recip engine master, no idea. Indexing it to 1 so that it watches that. The on value is 1, nothing else needed, just click submit. And so now I'm going to press actually on that button on my Stream Deck, and you should see that. And I'll bring my Stream Deck back in again. Unfortunately, you can't keep the Stream Deck locked to the front. It will disappear. But if I press this now, that engine just toggles backwards, but within the cage. Live with it. Okay. Fuel pump. That does work. So there's the on, there's the off, and on my Stream Deck, it's just a toggle, and we're toggling the electrical fuel pump. And the variable we're looking for again is the general engine fuel pump switch, indexed to 1 so it can check whether it's on or off. Same as before. If we look for pump as our variable, it'll be somewhere in the fuel system here, and is our fuel pump. Let's move that so I can see there. General engine fuel pump switch, that's what we're looking for. And if you, rather than the fuel system, I'm using this one in the aircraft engine variables, general engine fuel pump on, indexing it to 1, and that works quite happily. You can watch variables, similar to the way you watch events. In the scripting here, we can watch a variable, but you have to know which variable you want to watch. This one here, if you just do an event, whatever you do, if it's available, it will appear here. But here we have to have a look around. Let's try again looking for the pump, and we'll try, you can look at various different variables. So we can put in this one here, the general engine fuel pump on, or we can look at the switch. Let's try both of those. Let's try this one first of all. So double click on there, and we'll index that to 1. And then we'll do the same again here. We will add another variable. Again, it is the pump. And this time we're looking at the switch rather than the actual pump itself to see what's going on there. So we'll index that to 1. Add that one in. And there was one other variable worth looking at on the pump. Fuel pump. Well, it says currently not used within the simulation, so we'll ignore that one. In fact, we can probably ignore most of these. Fuel system pump active. Well, it's only active if we've got the battery switched on as well, and I'm running this at the moment without the battery. I just want to flick the switches. Fuel transfer pump on. We'll have a look and see what it does anyway. We'll index it to 1 just so we can keep an eye on what's going on. So we'll add that variable there. So if I now play with this switch here, and we can watch what happens to the variables when it's on. The only one that's come on is that one there, the general engine variable 1. That's now switched it on. Let's turn the battery on. Let's have some battery running, and we'll see if that changes anything here. So again, we'll flick the switch, and here it's only just checking that fuel engine pump is actually running. So that's the one for the switch, and that's the one for the pump. But that's only active if we actually have the electrics on. Turn the electrics off. It doesn't work. Okay, but it does check the switch position. So that's the one that's most fruitful for us. So that's how you kind of investigate. There's a bit of guesswork, a bit of intuition, and have a look and see what's actually going on by watching events and watching variables. Oh, I said I wasn't going to do too much of that, but I got carried away and did a fair bit of it. But I hope that's helpful anyway to you. So back to that fuel pump. The programming for that. That's the text for it, and there's the fuel pump. Toggle the electrical fuel pump, and checking that variable, the general engine fuel pump switch, and see if it's on or not. And we're just toggling that, and we submit. These ones I will deal with on a separate video. They're much more complicated. They do take a whole video of their own to get through. Avionics. This one doesn't work as a toggle. I can't work out why. So we have to use an on-off switch for this one here. There is, again, if you bring up the scripting, let's close these off. And we'll remove these variables here so we're not distracted by those variables. So if we watch the event of the Avionics master, it doesn't say anything about avionics. It talks about connecting buses to buses and toggling electrical circuit, but we don't need to do that. What we do really need to do is, if I can bring up my Stream Deck, we need to toggle. We need to switch on and off the Avionics master set. Now it looks like, if I go into my RPN script editor, on the events, let's go for Avionics. They don't actually work for us. There is an Avionics toggle master, but if you put that onto a switch and click on it, I can't make it work. It doesn't do the animation and doesn't actually work. So that isn't particularly helpful to us. So what actually works best for us is, if we don't have a toggle switch, have an on-off switch, and the events are set with the value 1, and that sets that on, and that's the on version, and the off version is Avionics Masters and sending a 0 to it. So we're doing the normal thing, sending a 1 and sending a 0, but as two separate events, and it needs to read the Avionics master switch to decide which one to send. So there are 3 entries here rather than just the 2 you get with the toggle. But it's doing pretty much the same as the toggle, and it has the 2 graphics, the on and the off graphic. So it works. It's just not using the toggle, it's using the on-off to do pretty much the same function. So we send that event, Avionics master set 1, as the on, and we send Avionics master set 0 for the off. No idea why. I wish I could tell you. Don't forget to click submit. So that works, but it works. So it's just a different technique from there. Okay, so let's clear that. The key left actually has to do 2 functions, and so does the key right. So I've set these up as a multi-action. Now multi-action is a standard Stream Deck function. So if you drag that in there, you can have a multi-function. I'll put it onto here, this multi-action button. It will need a graphic. At the moment it's just got the fact that there are multiple actions behind it. So you need to drop a graphic onto it. But once you're in here, double clicking on here, we can drag across the actions that we need. So if you needed a toggle followed by another event or something, you can drag those in and program them up in the normal Lorby axes and O's method, and it will just run through this multiple list here. So that's what we're doing. We're just programming up so that when we press that button, it does a number of events. If you need to put a delay in between them, if something takes a little while to do, you can drop a delay into there. A second is quite long, but you can drop delays into there. So this does quite a lot. Multi-action is quite useful. And if we have a look at what's going on, let's come out of here and we'll just delete that from there. And we've got this multi-action here. The multiple action for it is it needs to do this is turning the key to the left, so you're turning the alternator off, and that's that event. So it just is an event, alternator off, and you said 1 to say that's what I want to happen. It doesn't need to read anything. You are not asking it to check the state of the alternator. You're not toggling the alternator. We are actually going to switch it off. So that's it. It's an event that says switch it off. And the other event is similar. Master battery off. Sending a 1 saying it's true. We want to send the master battery off. And that's it. So these are just events that turn it off. We can see that happening, I think. If we just turn this on, if I clear that list now, and we'll turn that off. There's the master battery off, alternator off. It also turns off various potentiometers that controls electrical circuits. We don't really need to do that. We are just turning it off, and it will just turn off. Okay, so the multi-action, as you can imagine, for the turning the key to the right, again, is a multi-action. And it's got the 2 actions, and all we're going to do is we're going to turn the alternator on and the battery on. So they're exactly the same events. I'm not going to deal with the light potentiometer here, that when we need that circuit we'll deal with that, and we'll switch that on when we need it. So we don't actually need to do anything about that at the moment. So just switching the battery on and the alternator on does the job in that multi-action there. Last one, the start button here. It's a single event, it's not a multi-action, and the event is set starter 1 held, and it will hold it for about 5 seconds, let go of it, and the engine will start. Okay, so we've got the 3 positions here, and let's just demonstrate that working. So let's tidy up the screen a bit, let's get rid of some of this stuff and prove to you that it works. So to start the engine here, first of all we need to just check that our throttle isn't too high, so roughly in idle. We obviously need to turn the engine master on, and I'm going to do that from my Stream Deck. So we see the master go on, and I'm going to turn on the position lights. You should see this position light here switch, and there it goes. So that is now on. Let's just get a bit of a zoom in on that so you can see for definite that that is on. So the graphics aren't very clear. Let's turn it off again and turn it on again. So it is clear. Yeah, pretty unsatisfactory. It's not the graphics from Microsoft. It's the button that they've Diamond or whoever makes it has chosen. But there we are. So we've got that on. No electrical system running yet, so we can't turn anything on. We can't turn fuel pumps on. It won't work. So we need to turn the battery on. So I'm going to do the key right button, and you should see the key over here move. The battery's on. We've got a warning going on here that we've got low voltage. If I turn the fuel pump on, it will operate. I'm not recording the cockpit sounds because it gets annoying for you having the warning beeping, so I've muted that at the moment. But that has run the fuel pump. And now if I do the last one, we'll press the start button there. My alerts go out, and if I change my view, you can see I've got a running propeller. So everything's up and running. Avionics is not switched on at the moment, so we won't be able to use our radios. If I try to do anything with the radios, nothing will happen, so we'll turn on the Avionics. switch is on, and now things are alive. And of course I'd need to go into my Garmin here and make that live, which I can do for my Stream Deck later on when I show you how I program that up. Okay, so that's working there. Last ones to deal with over here is the fuel transfer and the pitot heat. Pitot, not sure, I've heard it pronounced both ways. So let's bring that in and we'll look at those buttons there. Let's bring that in. So these are pretty simple ones here. It's a toggle. Fuel transfer custom index toggle. That's what we need to use for there, and we're sending 1, and we are checking if the fuel transfer pump is on and it's indexed to number 1. So it's a bit of a horrible search. We need to do fuel transfer pump on. We can't check the actual switch, I don't think. You actually have to check whether that transfer is on. You could do from X's and O's, we could look at events and variables, so we can where are we? Let's watch an event and watch a variable. Watch a variable. Let's tidy up a little bit so you haven't got all that away. Right, so let's turn the fuel transfer. Let's clear this list and we'll turn on the fuel transfer. And there it is, fuel transfer custom index toggle 1, and turn it off, and it's sent an event. This counts the number of times we've sent an event, so that's all it's sending. So that is the variable we need to use. And if I bring my Stream Deck in for you, let's get that off of that screen there. So the variable we were looking at was fuel transfer pump on, so we'll watch that variable. Let's select that variable, and if I transfer fuel transfer pump on, so we can't check the switch, we can only check the pump is on, and we index that. Let's put that in. We'll index that as 1. What I want to experiment with, because I can't remember if I did experiment with it, whether it works when the electricity is off. Does it just check the pump? So obviously it's off now, and if I press that, that's on. But I'm going to turn the alternator and battery off now and watch that variable now. It does work when there's it's saying the pump's working, but we know that we've turned off the electrical systems, so it's not really checking the pump, it's actually testing the switch. But there you are. And the last one, of course, was the pitot heat, and that's a straightforward Lorby Axis No toggle, pitot heat toggle, check whether the pitot heat is on or not, and saying that 1 is the on value. And so it's very similar to these easy light switches, just another switch to put on. And so is the parking brake. It's a toggle, and I've just done 2 different screenshots for the graphics, the on and the off. On is down, off is up, and there we are. So parking brakes is the toggle. The variable for it is the parking brakes indicator. But it's a boolean, so it's an on and off. So parking brake indicator is what we're looking for to see whether it's on or off. Another way of checking it. So it's a slightly unusual variable we need to check for. But if you just do a search for parking, it'll pretty well come up for you. Okay, so they're all the relatively easy ones done. All of those, that one, fuel pump. These are relatively easy. These are more in-depth and complex, so we'll deal with those in separate videos. And I'm not going to talk about the gauges. You don't really need them. So cheating slightly, because it isn't an exhaust gas temperature in this system. It's a managed system. It does that all for you. Rev counter, there is already one on the screen. The flaps indicator. if you want those, you can download various gauges from Lorbe's actual site itself and from flightsim.to. If you go into flightsim.to and do a search there for Lorbe axes and O's, you can download packs of gauges. You don't actually have to draw them yourself. And this one here is the throttle, which is a bit dubious because we haven't really got a throttle. It's power, but it's only a text gauge. It's there. I have done other videos on the gauges as well, so, but I'm not going to deal with them here. It's getting long enough already, this recording. Okay, so I will see you in the next one, and we will talk through these more complicated primary flight display, radio, main flight display, and then the cabin lights. We'll talk through those. Probably that's one video. That's quite short. 2 videos, 3 videos, and if you want to do the views, that's 4 more videos on my Stream Deck setup, because they're relatively in depth. Okay, then I shall see you in the next video. Whichever one I'll do next. I might do the PFD, the primary flight display next, I think.